Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Is this carrying through the mic okay? Yeah. Great, thank you. So how many of you are Massachusetts residents? Oh, hello. Well, what I would like to do is thank you very much for your support. Your tax dollars are what funds the ecological restoration work that I'm about to show you. And then for those of you that also pay federal income taxes, your tax dollars also fund the ecological restoration work that I'm going to tell you about. So the work that our division does is funded through the Massachusetts general budget and also through the environmental bond. And then the on-the-ground work, the work that pays for the bulldozers and things like that, that is primarily federal grants, which of course also come from tax dollars. So this is your work that I'm going to be sharing with you. And the work that we do to restore Massachusetts habitats is actually, funded by and invested in by all of you. So thank you very much for that opportunity. So I'm going to talk just for a few minutes about Massachusetts and the role of our division as a state partner. To start off with, I want to thank Elizabeth for her excellent work and to let you all know that the first main stem Charles River Dam, which is to be removed in Bellingham, will be removed probably next year. So all kinds of ecological restoration work are underway in the Charles River watershed. So what is restoration? The way our division defines it is the process of assisting a degraded ecosystem. So it's not about trying to go back to a previous time. We're not trying to go back to the time of the Pilgrims or pre-Pilgrim or the time prior to people. Instead, we're trying to help ecosystems restore, and we do that by restoring the basic processes that drive ecosystems. Aquatic ecosystems in Massachusetts are extremely diverse, and this slide shows you an example of a western Massachusetts steep stream, kind of a mountain stream. You can see here, this is the Ipswich River, a low gradient, slowly flowing river. You see a headwaters wetland here down in Plymouth and a salt marsh in the Great Marsh. So our aquatic ecosystems are extremely diverse. And in being so diverse, they support a diversity of life. And of course, that's the reason we're all here today, is to think about and talk about biodiversity in the context of climate change. So what this means is that if we can restore the ecological diversity of our aquatic systems in Massachusetts, we therefore give rise to this great web of life and diversity of species that we see around us every day. The role of our group, the Division of Ecological Restoration, is to identify stressors to aquatic ecosystems in Massachusetts. Once we've identified those stressors, we carry out on-the-ground projects that relieve those stressors. Those projects restore ecological processes. And in this slide, you see pictures of our staff. There's about 13 of us in the division. Of that number, there are 8 of us that focus on-the-ground habitat restoration work. And so in this picture, you see folks involved in culvert replacements in the far left there. You see a salt marsh restoration taking place in the middle of winter, 2 winters ago during all that snow and cold in the lower left. You see a wetland restoration project going on here, and you see flow monitoring going on here. So our job is to carry out that work that restores those basic processes and supports the aquatic ecosystems in Massachusetts. The processes that we focus on restoring are basically the free movement of water, sediment, and organics. And whether you're in a wetland, an estuarine system, or in a river, these are the ecosystem processes that drive the entire system. And so the work that we do is focused very specifically on restoring these basic processes. In this slide, you see a picture of a dam removal going on. This is on the Nissitissit River in Pepperell in northeastern Massachusetts. And I use this as an example because a dam is something that blocks those basic ecosystem processes. It prohibits the free movement of water, it stops the movement of sediment, and it stops the transport of organic material. And so it basically blocks or stresses those ecosystem drivers. And when you remove the dam, it allows those ecosystem processes to pick right back up and continue. And so that's the type of work that our division focuses on. We do this work in partnership with a wide variety of organizations, and you see some happy volunteers in this photo. This is a picture of a bunch of us after moving some rare mussels in advance of a dam removal project to make sure that those mussels would not be harmed by the drawdown associated with the dam removal. So we carry out our work in partnership with municipalities, property owners, non-governmental organizations, and watershed associations across the state. I'm going to go through and just briefly summarize the major types of projects that we do. And as I go through, I'm going to touch on how each helps biodiversity respond to climate change. There are really 3 challenges that I want to comment on related to climate change that our work helps to address. So, with global warming and sea level rise, we expect to see salt marshes becoming submerged as the water level rises. So that is a major challenge that our work helps address. Another thing we expect to see, which we're already seeing now, we've been seeing for the last 30 to 40 years, is a change in the magnitude and frequency of large storm events. So storms are getting larger, they're happening more frequently. That causes changes in the timing of stream flow, so rivers that were high at certain times and low at other times naturally now are having slightly different cycles. And then we're also seeing, as you know, temperature, a change in air temperature, an increase in air temperature. And that leads to an increase in water temperature. That increase in water temperature is challenging for a lot of aquatic organisms. I'll use the eastern brook trout as an example. The eastern brook trout relies on clear, cold water and needs to be able to access habitats that provide that. So with a change in air temperature, you see a change in, eventually a change in water temperature also. So the work that we do is designed to address these particular impacts from climate change. The first thing that we do is we work with communities to restore stream flow. As you may know, many streams and rivers in Massachusetts are stressed due to withdrawal of water, particularly during the summer months. And this is a picture of the Ipswich River in the summer. And you will notice one remarkable thing about this picture of the Ipswich River, and that is there is no water flowing. That entire dry area that you're looking at is the river bed. And these trees here, that's a wetland. So the Ipswich is the iconic example of this, but this is true of many, many, many small streams throughout Massachusetts. And this is just simply due to water use. So one of the things that our division does is work proactively in a non-regulatory way with interested communities to restore water to rivers. That is obviously a basic component that will help species respond to climate change, because without water, we have no aquatic ecosystems. That's probably our most important work. We also work to remove unwanted, obsolete dams. As was just mentioned, there are about 3,000 dams in Massachusetts. This is some of them that you see right here. They're primarily built to operate mills back in the day, and they're no longer in use and are falling apart. As Elizabeth mentioned, they have a variety of habitat impacts, including water quality, causing water to stagnate, trapping sediment instead of allowing it to go downstream, where it could then help salt marshes keep up with sea level rise. Tons of impacts. And this is what that number of dams looks like. So these are the 3,000 dams that we know about that fragment habitat. If you were to overlay the number of culverts, a culvert being where a road passes over a stream, there's about 40,000 of those. So our riverine habitats are very much fragmented and chopped up. But the good news is that this is something that can be remedied through on-the-ground action within communities working with property owners. And so this is a major focus of our work. This is an example of what a dam removal project looks like in action. This is the Mill River in Taunton, Massachusetts. And then this is what the river looks like after the dam came out. You can see a free-flowing, meandering stream. It's got willows along the banks. And then the larger trees are the original sort of forest corridor. What we've seen is that one of the major important reasons for doing this is that when habitats are good, you don't need to restore them. You can simply remove the barriers and let the aquatic organisms back into those habitats. You don't need to try and fix the habitat. The habitat is already there. And so in this case, what you see in the lower left is a picture of the first river herring to return to this habitat in 200 years after the dam was removed. So this is a very simple action. Dam removals are complicated projects from an engineering standpoint, but conceptually, it's very simple. You remove the dams, you replace the culverts with larger structures, and you allow the organisms to reclaim the habitats. We also work to restore freshwater wetlands in the headwaters. This is a picture of a former cranberry bog in Plymouth, and the headwaters are here. Called Beaver Dam Brook, and so it flows kind of along the side there and then out the top of the slide. You can see another tributary right here. And this is a former cranberry bog that is now being restored to a freshwater wetland. It's more than 200 acres. And so when it transitions from a bog back to a natural wetland, rather from an agricultural farm to a natural wetland, it will reclaim the function and values that freshwater wetlands have. So it'll once again be able to filter water, to funnel water into the groundwater, into the aquifer, and to provide habitat for a range of aquatic organisms, as well as birds and other wildlife. This is what that project looks like as it's taking place. I took this picture, I think, in November, or just probably November, looking at the trees. And the stream was re-meandered from having been straightened during cranberry bog cultivation. And then the design calls for adding a lot of logs and other complex habitat to the stream so that it can once again provide habitat for fish and aquatic insects. And then the fourth type of work that we do is salt marsh restoration. And here you see a picture of Eagleneck Creek salt marsh in Truro. And this marsh has been degraded by an undersized culvert, which is preventing tidal flow from fully going into and out of that marsh. And you can see a sign of that in the Phragmites that is lining the marsh. So with less tidal water, Phragmites, which is an invasive plant, is able to move in because it can kind of send its little tentacles out and get a foothold in the marsh. Our goal with this project is going to be to build a bigger culvert, which will allow water to move in. This is important because with climate change, as sea level rises, we run the risk of losing the marsh. And so this will allow that marsh to migrate further inland. So how do we do this? We have 7 staff, as I mentioned. We work in partnership with property owners, nonprofits, municipalities, and nonprofit organizations. The staff in my group, we kind of run the projects. We're the project managers. We raise the money, we write the grants, we oversee engineering and design, we help property owners with the permitting process, we help with outreach by presenting at local meetings, and we help with construction logistics. The local partners are the ones that get these projects going in the first place. Often it's a dam owner who approaches us, or a town, but other times a watershed association might approach a dam owner, form a partnership, and then the two of them come to us and say, hey, we've got this great idea for our project. We also work with towns to help them carry out work themselves, for example, replacing undersized culverts with those that provide passage for aquatic organisms. We get around $750,000 a year from the environmental bond, and we use that to leverage federal grants. And so the way it works out in the end is that for every state dollar invested, we're able to leverage anywhere from 4 to 10 outside dollars in grants to actually get the work done. because $750,000 a year does not go very far in habitat restoration. But by working together with all these partners, using the state dollars to leverage outside grants, we're able to get a lot of work done. And this just kind of illustrates our role in working together with this range of partners, whether it's towns, consultants, funders, regulators, and nonprofits. So our progress to date. We've been at this work since around 2009. That's when our division was formed. Since that time, we've reconnected around 200 river miles through dam removal. We probably have another 200 river miles ahead of us in the next few years. We've restored around 1,800 acres of wetlands, and that's both freshwater and salt marsh wetlands. We've removed around 40 dams, 85 wetland projects, and at any one time, we have 30 projects or so in the planning stages. We're just about to put out a call for new ecological restoration projects. We choose our projects by a competitive process. So if any of you, through your connections in your community, have an ecological restoration project in mind, now is the time to apply for assistance. If you Google our website, Division of Ecological Restoration, you will see something called a pre-RFR posted on that website. And that describes how we are going to put out this call for projects and invites interested applicants to give us a call and talk your ideas through. So I encourage any of you that may have work that you'd like to see done in your town of this nature to give us a call. So in summary, I would just like to say that ecological restoration, by making more habitat of a high quality available to aquatic species, allows those species and ecosystems to be more resilient in the face of climate change. And so our hope is that over time, that will support and preserve our biodiversity going forward. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to meeting you during the break.